Hey guys, Juan here. Today we're gonna start from where we started the last Power Query video that I made. As I mentioned, the objective of the last video is to show you how to get things done, even if it's not gonna be in the most optimal way. So if you see right here, this is the table with which we started. It had an extra row that wasn't necessary. It of course needed to be unpivoted because now there were a lot of different columns, and it had this extra column that we needed to get rid of. And these are the steps in which I solved the problem. Now for this video, which is going to be a little bit more intermediate, I'm going to show you how to reduce this and how to prevent some of the mistakes. Now, if we check the apply steps carefully, you're going to notice something interesting, and that is that the change type appears 3 times. What does change type do? Well, let's inspect this a bit more carefully. It takes every single column from a table and it automatically assigns it with a data type. Data types in Power Query are the same as if I click on a column on the little icon. So we have decimal numbers, percentages, dates, date, time zone, text, binary, and so on. The only types that are not present here, and it's list and table, but we're going to speak about those later. But just so you know, that's what it's meant by data types. It automatically gives them. Now, I personally believe you should probably go to the options and completely disable this option of automatically assigning types, because it just leaves a lot of steps that I never agreed to do in my data and that now look messy. It's not a big deal. How can I go to solving this? Well, you can just simply click on the X, remove all of these steps. Because in my flow, I'm not relying at any moment in using something. Let's just remove this one as well. I'm not relying on data types at any moment during this flow, so there's not going to be any problem. And now I finally have my end product with some of the columns have ambiguous data types. How can I solve this? Well, you could do it manually. So go column by column and say, hey, this is a whole number. Hey, this is also a whole number. And this is also a whole number. Plus, this one has been already identified as text. This is a way. Actually, it's been already identified as text, but I guess it won't hurt to click once again. No. Okay, I thought the change was going to be reflected here in the code, but apparently that's not the case. So this is a way of doing it, the more manual way. But as you can imagine, this is not practical at all if you have a lot of columns. So you can always just remove this step for now. Go to transform and click here on detect data types, which automatically does the process for you. Now, interestingly enough, this didn't work out as I expected. It didn't classify almost any data type except for the month. So sure, in this particular case, well, it's good to do it manually. But that's fine. Let's just check some other things that I did that are not super optimal. And there is this step right here called rename columns. So what I did is, let me show you. I went from attribute and value, and I just click on them and change them to month and returns. The reason why this is not an optimal approach is because if you check carefully here in the formula bar, which as a reminder, I explained this in my previous video, you can activate it by going to view and click here formula bar. I recommend you to always have it activated. It's a game changer really. So once you notice here, even if you don't want to learn M, even if you don't know, don't care, you can still notice like, attribute and value are things here. So maybe I can simply, I don't know, I can simply just change this to month and change these to, in this case, returns. And now I can get rid of this extra step. So instead of adding an extra step renaming columns, I was able to do little changes in the text that make sure that the columns are named by default exactly how I want it, right? So really cool things. Just another example of how that works is I can click on add column. I'm gonna add an index column. Sure, let's just insert it. Well, in this case, it's not that important. And now I have an index column, but point one, it is called index. Second, it starts from 0, which there is nothing wrong with this. But if you want to change this, well, you can also do it from the code. Of course, I could create this column once again. I could rename it. I don't know. But the quickest way would be to change this to something like row ID or whatever it is that you want to call it. And take this little 0 right here and change it for a 1. You can also change the increment steps like by 2, and then it increments by 2 or something, but I think 1 is fine. So let's unpack everything that I just told you. The first thing is be really careful. More often than not, you don't need change type multiple times in the same flow. Secondly, by checking the M code right here, sometimes you're able to spot some interesting things that you could potentially just change, like the row ID and so on. And finally, yeah, it's always a good idea to have the formula bar activated. Now stay tuned. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to make this a little bit more dynamic, because as you can see right here, it's literally hard coding some values, which is not optimal in every case. So if you're curious about M and how you can make your Power Query work even more reusable, well, check the next videos. Thank you for watching.